Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today we're going to paint a snowy landscape with a frozen over pond, and this will be a lot of fun and some watercolor. I have decided to try out this new paper from Arteza. It is their new 100% cotton watercolor paper. Now they have two different kinds. This one says it's double-sided and is $1 more a pack than this one here. This is kind of pricey. This is $24.99 a pack and this is $25.99 a pack. So I wanted to give it a shot and see how it worked. One thing I wanted to mention is that both of these came packed with little bumpers on the corner to protect the edges of the paper, which I thought was really nice. I don't want to shove it back on and then like damage a corner of the paper, but I thought that was kind of nice. And we'll see how this behaves since it is kind of an expensive paper. I'm going to start by putting a horizon line about 1/3 of the way up from the bottom of my paper, and I'm just very lightly drawing a line with a pencil here. And I have my paper taped down on all 4 sides to my mat. I know that's really light, but I don't want to go too dark right now. And I will link up the reference photo down below so you can see it. I also want to put a little bit of a stream coming in. I'm starting it about 1/3 of the way into my paper. I'm bringing it around to about another 1/3 of the way around. And then I'm going to bring it back down pretty much close to the center. So I can make that a little bit darker because that's where it's going to be. And then the other side of that is going to come in here and then go right off the edge over here. Now I wanted to get the stream placed because I want to put some trees down, and I want to do my birch trees with masking tape, which if you've seen my beginners start here playlist, I talk about doing masking tape birch trees as one of my favorite beginner projects. So I like to take just regular old masking tape and I just tear it so that I have nice rough edges, and you can save those little bits you tear off to be little trees or branches. But basically what I want is just kind of like a rough edge, and this is gonna look really natural and, you know, look like a real tree with bark on the edges and whatnot. And the nice thing is that if your paint, you know, your tape doesn't stick down perfectly and you end up with paint seeping underneath, it'll be fine because it will look like you've got some texture on the edges and it'll be completely fine. So let's get one in here, kind of like that. I don't want to waste that, so I'm gonna tear it off there. You do want to press it down pretty good. Now where I have that little kind of jut area there, I'm going to add this on as a branch. Usually have really spindly dark branches, but sometimes you'll have some thicker ones, so I like to try to get those built up as well. At the beginning of a tree right there. And this can take you a little time. You might even want to like rip a bunch ahead of time, and then when you sit down to paint, you'll have a bunch ready to go. Now if I just have like one, if I have like a perfect tear kind of like that, I would go ahead and throw that in. I probably wouldn't bother tearing the other side. You can always kind of stack another one on the side if you want to. A lot of times your paper wants to kind of tear not so beautiful and evenly. But I think that's fine because I'm going to have, you know, I can always rough it up a little bit there. So I've got 3 trees. That's pretty good. You want to work on you want to avoid even numbers. Work in odd numbers if you can. I've got this tape stuck to my fingers. It's driving me kind of crazy. And I'm going to throw a couple just little branches kind of coming out, so I don't waste the tape, and it gives us a little bit of interest. And I think that is really nice looking. There we go. So just press it down with your fingers. Make sure you get any place you want to have a nice border pressed down with your fingers. I'm going to put a little, like kind of a little bit of a mountainy hill, a little bit below, quarter of the way down, 1/3 of the way down, I mean. And just bring that down like that. We'll put some kind of shrubs kind of going in around there. So I have taller shrubs here, and I'm just kind of like making them smaller as they work back towards the horizon. I'm going to just put a little bit of a kind of like a hilly mountain range back here. And then We can do another kind of area like that, kind of bookending our design here. Okay, and you can actually draw it, you know, continue line over if you want to, but you don't really need to. And I just want to make sure that everything is kind of converging. Everything's kind of vanishing off into the distance, and that looks pretty good to me. I don't really think I need more than that for a sketch to get started, and we've got a nice landscape. Now hopefully this is dark enough for you to see. Now I'm going to try something a little different here today. I'm going to lift this up and I am going to paint water on the back, and I'm going to do this carefully so I'm not right up to the edge. But I think this will give us, it'll help keep our paper extra flat, and it will also give us some really interesting textures in our paint. And this is something that my instructor did a lot in the watercolor course that I took. He would wet the back of his paper, and it would make his paint get a really interesting kind of scaly texture to it. And I wanted to see if I could make that happen with this, because it is going to be a simple landscape. And I think that will look kind of cool. But I'm not going right up to the tape because I want to make sure it does stick down to my mat pretty well. And I'm working on a silicone mat, the Jane Davenport Paint to You Faint silicone mat. And it just protects the wood of my desk here so I don't damage it. You wouldn't want to wet this and stick it down on wood because that's not good for the wood. Try to get it even. You can always tip it to the light and see if you've got everything. Looks pretty good. I think we're all right. Okay, press that down. And now I'm going to paint as usual. I'm going to start, oh, come on you, stick down. I'm going to start by wetting the sky. Just with clear water. I'm using a 1-inch flat Royal Majestic. Use whatever you want though. I'm going to wet right down to the treetops there that I sketched, but not over them yet. Just get a really nice even coating. And now I am going to go into, I'm going to mix. I'm going to take a little ultramarine blue, which is a nice cool, clean, wintry sky blue. And I'm going to add some cerulean to it. And these are the Paul Rubens paints. I thought they would be kind of fun for this technique because someone said that they don't contain oxgall, so I thought that they might give me that texture in my paint because they're not going to flow as much, I guess, as other paints. So I wanted to give that a whirl and see how it works. So I'm just starting with this blue up towards the top. The other thing, when you do at the back, your paint's going to flow less. It's going to kind of stay where you put it, which is kind of a neat effect. And now I want some kind of sunset color, so I'm going to clean my brush. I'm going to pick up some yellow. I think I'll go with this nice warm, I think it's cadmium yellow. That is really bright. I'm going to add a little bit of crimson to this. That's a little, well, I want a little bit of that color. Oh yeah, that's kind of what I want actually. I want to kind of bring it up to the blue but not overlap it, but the nice thing is when you do this and you've wet the back, the colors aren't going to go completely crazy on you. They're going to pretty much stay where you put them. And then while I'm at it, I can use some of these colors for my stream. I do want to get some kind of clouds in here, so by going in here with this orangey color that I have mixed, I can actually make some kind of grayish clouds that are kind of hemmed in the golden light. I'm going to do a little bit of the ultramarine blue and the crimson, get myself a little purple going. And add some of that in there too. So we get some kind of shady clouds. Tap, 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 get some of those different textures in there. Just try not to overwork it. It's very tempting to get in and overwork it, but you want to keep it nice and easy. Let the paint do its own work and its own thing. Hope you're having a chance to have a little downtime as you get ready for the holidays. It can be a very busy time of year, and sometimes it's a very slow time of year. If you don't celebrate the same holidays as your friends, you could be kind of like have nothing to do. Well, take some time for yourself and do some painting or whatever it is that you want to do. Now, I wanted to try out the rag that came with this kit to see if it's any good for like a painting rag. So I'm going to wrap it around my finger, and I'm going to press in right here in the middle and lift out the sun, like the sun is setting. I suppose it could be rising. And I'm just going to keep dabbing in the, oh, this looks pretty good. I'm going to keep dabbing in the center until I've kind of pulled out that nice, bright, glowing sun. And I can also lift up a little bit of, kind of like highlight on the edge of these clouds. Just, you can wipe a little bit on a cotton paper. You don't have to dab necessarily, but if you are doing this on a wood-based paper, you definitely want to dab and not rub. So just by folding my towel, I can get just those kind of like outlines of lit up edges of clouds. Now when you tape down your paper, maybe I should have taped it after I wet the back, because the paper will expand. But I think I might just need to untape it and stick it back down. I just want to give it the look of some of those clouds lighting up. I think that's good. I'm sorry if I'm mumbling. Oh, another thing I can do is wipe out a little bit of that purple and add a little bit of yellow in there in spots too. That would be pretty. Get some of that reflected color in the clouds. Yeah, I think this rag must have been meant not just for looks, but for actual utility, because it does work really well in the for lifting out color and for wetting and for lifting up for drying your brush and for lifting up color on the painting. So, oh, I like that. And just a little bit of that peachy color in there. Oh, that's pretty. Okay, now we're going to do some of those colors here in the water, because we might as well have it while it's all wet on our paper. It'll be a little easier for us to control how much color we put in there, because we know they'll be drying together, so the shift will be about the same. Now I'm seeing that in this water, the sky looks about the same, like the yellows and the gold anyway look the same in the water as the sky. The blue isn't so blue, it's more gray, but the warm colors are reflecting very true. Sometimes values get muted in water, but not always. I'm going to get this in, and then I will lift out that super bright spot from the sun, that bright flare. And I want to go in and get my other sky colors. It's a little more gray, so I'm just going to take the blue, mix it in with some of that purple, pick up some of that orange so I don't end up with a really bright blue, and add that in there. Get that reflection there. I feel like I should be a little bit more purpley. Don't be afraid to adjust it. While it's wet is the time to adjust it. When you start letting it dry and then you start fussing with it, then that's when you get those awkward looking backgrounds that don't look pretty, they don't look natural. So do all this in the wet and wet if you can. Okay, and I also, so there's a couple lifts that I want to do. I want to do the lift here right below the sun. This towel does get wet really soon, so just kind of keep that in mind. You might need to change it. I'm going in with a little bit more, I'm going to clean my brush, going a little bit more yellow, because I feel like I'd lifted out too much. My brush is not super wet though. And I'm going ahead and adding a little bit of rippling in there. Slightly icy water. And I'm going to lift out reflections for these trees. And I'm just doing that with a dry brush. I'm just trying to pretty much copy what the trees look like. And I might even go in there with my rag a little bit and pull it out a little bit more. Okay. All right, so now we have a bunch of snow, and we want to get to that as well. And you're going to have a lot of these colors happening in the snow too, except you're going to see some more blues, like areas that are facing away from the light are going to be cooler, and areas where the light is bouncing off of it are going to be warmer. So I'm going to grab some of this, this red. I'm going to take a little bit of that red into the yellow. Well, this color is good here. It's kind of like a, it's kind of like a, I would almost say like a juice, like a strawberry juice color, really watery though. And that's going to go right in here on the snow. This is a really wet color. It should fade out a little bit as it dries, I'm hoping, because I've got it fairly bright. I'm going to leave a gap where, you know, where it's going to come in contact with other paint, so I don't have running where I don't want it. Now I'm going to grab some violet. So I took the red. I'm using the same colors. I'll list them in the video description. Ultramarine blue and the same red, the same crimson-y color. And that's going to go over the snow up into this little area where we've got the kind of some shrubs. And up over to the tree line, maybe a little bit more blue up over the tree line, because the tree line has shadow in it. And then grabbing some of that blue and adding that to the bottom of those little shrubs there that we'll paint in a moment after it dries. And you can put little dabs of this blue, because any place you have like a divot of snow, you're going to see the shadow in the divot of snow, and it's going to be cooler because it's going to be shadowed from that warm light. So it's going to show up as kind of an opposite hue. It's going to be cool rather than warm. And still just using the same brush. I'm really enjoying this paper. Arteza has, now, you know, obviously I don't work for them, but most companies like this will outsource all their manufacturing, and they go kind of pick and choose from different factories that make what they want. And I would not be surprised if if this was picked from a company that makes fine paint. I really would not be surprised. Like if it was one of the ones that you see in the artist grade supply catalogs. And in fact, I thought that on their website at one point it said Milford and Cezanne under their papers, but I didn't see that when I looked today, because I wanted to see, you know, what was what, like which paper was which, but it didn't say that. So I don't want to speak out of school on that. Now I'm just going in with a damp brush and just kind of softening some of the areas so I don't just have stark white where I don't want it. Ooh, I'm really liking the depth in this scene. I think it's going to turn out to be really pretty. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to do is add a cool shadow here. I am going to try to leave a little gap of white snow so I don't mess anything up. I am going in with my pretty much ultramarine blue. I'll take a little cerulean because I use that in the sky, so I want to make sure I have it elsewhere. And then I'm just going to pick up, honestly, I think I'm just going to pick up some of this dirty color over here to tone it down, because you don't want anything, I don't want this, what I'm doing in here for a shadow, to be as vibrant as the sky. So that will just kind of help me. Now, because the back of the paper is wet, my paint shouldn't go too crazy, even if I do touch into that water by mistake. So that's kind of a nice feature. So this gives us a nice kind of like a snowbank, like the snow kind of falls off there. And then I'm going to put some shadows back here. around my trees, just for divots of snow. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is this little mass back here, and I'm just going to mix some primary colors together to get myself a nice neutral. So I'm going to start off with Ultramarine because that's my strongest blue. Remember, I have two blues going on. I've got Cerulean and I have Ultramarine. I'm just going to do Ultramarine. I'm going to use my red, which is Crimson. So you can follow along with whatever brand you have. And that's the thing, I did have somebody comment, and it just didn't even occur to me, because like whenever somebody's using whatever they're using for paint, if I'm watching a tutorial or a project that I want to try, like even on TV, I've always been like this. I've never thought, well, I got to go out and buy Martha Stewart brand paint, or I have to go get this brand paint. I'm like, I'll just get whatever acrylic paint or whatever watercolor I need. So I just wanted to mention that to you, that, you know, I will give you standard names. You can use whatever brand you want. I will link up to this palette as well in case you want this one, but please don't feel like you have to go out and buy the exact same thing. I mean, you'd have like 100 palettes. You'd be like me with way too many palettes sitting in your stash. If you did that, you certainly don't need to. Okay, so I mixed up kind of a dark color here. And I think I want a little more blue in there because it's a little too purple. And what I'm going to do is I am just going to paint this far back area here. And I'm still with that same brush. If you feel like changing brushes, go right ahead. But I'm going to stick with this one because that's kind of a fun challenge sometimes too, just using one brush. Now, I'm sitting down, but I'm going to stand up because I want to make sure I've got that horizon line, the bottom of this, that's why you can hear my chair. I want to make sure I have the bottom of that fairly straight. So I'm just trying to pull a nice straight line across there. I'm just trying to decide if I get a little hump there or not. There we go. And I'm just going to tap in these treetops. And I don't care if it gets a little fuzzy because that is far away. And that's why I added a little extra blue and didn't keep that more warmer, like with the extra purpley tones, because I knew far away things are duller, cooler, and fuzzier. So that just helps give me a little bit of depth. And then also if I can tap some lines in there, they're going to spread a little bit and they'll give me the illusion of like some faraway trees. That is spreading into the water below a little more than I like, so I'm going to try to blot that a bit. My rag is pretty wet at this stage of the game. I will tell you that. I feel like I'm taking way too much paint though. Okay, that, you know what? I think I'm gonna have to come back to that when it is dry because I am losing too much color there and I don't want to have to go back in and paint all that. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take that color, I'm going to add more blue and add more yellow to it so I get the illusion of kind of like a muted pine green. Same yellow that I was using though. Actually, I can add some of that cerulean in there because that green has a little bit more of a the blue has a little bit more of a green base, and I can go in and tap in some of those trees here because pines are still going to be green even in the winter. And I can go ahead and leave like snippets of white because that could be like snow. We've got snow on the ground, so we'd have snow in these hills, we'd have snow on some of the branches. Definitely be some snow on the bare ground. And yeah, just leave some little sparkles. Now I'm going to give a little more, get a little bit of blues in there. Give it some depth. There, and also give it that kind of cool feeling. And we'll go over here and we'll do the same thing in the background around these trees. Don't pretend the trees aren't even there. Like you're painting that same thing over here. It's just, yeah, just the same exact thing. Might even be a wee bit closer if you want to bring it down a little bit further. You can do that too. I'm just going right on the tip of the brush because It's still pretty wet in the sky, so I just want to make sure things don't spread too much. I wonder if we could do this whole thing with one brush. Wouldn't that be cool? That'd be so cool if we did this all with a 1-inch flat brush. And then that would be really good for folks that want to, you know, improve their brush work a little bit. I want to bring that out a little bit. And I can, because I can lift off any of that gray behind there if I need to, which I don't think I will. I'm not seeing any pilling of this paper, which is good. And we're using a lot of wet washes. Sometimes paper can't hack it. I am feeling like I might need to dry this though pretty soon. We're using one rag really well in one brush. Look at that though. This paper lifts really well. That's really nice to see. I wish it wasn't so expensive, quite frankly. I mean, generally Artesa's products are super inexpensive, so this is that was really really surprising for me to see that this paper was quite a bit more than what they typically charge. And they did send it to me for free to review, so I just wanted to let you know that too, or to try out. They didn't even specify review necessarily, just to try out. I don't typically review paper. Well, I mean, I'll say if it's good or bad, but I usually don't do a video just on a brand of paper because there's just so many, you know, and it's not as visually enticing, I don't think, to watch. Like, ooh, here's a big white sheet of something, and oh, look, there's another big white sheet of something. You know, it's just not as visually interesting. Okay. So, anything I want to do before I dry this? I think oh, now I kind of want to grab a smaller brush, but I'm also like really interested in using just this big brush. I think I'm going to grab some blue. I'm going to mix it into this muck here. So kind of like just a brownish kind of muted gray. And I'm going to just, at the edge of the water, add this color just to give it a little bit of depth. Working on the tip and the edge of my brush. Kind of like when you get that little bit of slushy ice on the edge of a pond. You know, it wants to try to freeze over, but it's just not ready yet. It's not quite cold enough. Not time to go ice skating or ice fishing yet, because the pond is not ready. You get that little bit of like slushy, trying to freeze, snowy ice on the edge. That's what I want to get in there right now. And now I think I'm going to dry this, and when we come back, we'll remove our masking trees, and we will paint our final details. When I dried this paper, I tipped it up, I wiped the mat underneath, and I dried the backside with my hair dryer as well, or my heat tool, I should say, because I wanted to make sure that it was fully dry. And you can see my paper is nice and flat, and I'm going to stick it right back down. Hopefully the tape isn't completely spent after all of that, but I'm really digging how the colors blended together in some areas, the beautiful texture that I have in the sky. I think it's just really special and nice, so I hope you do try this. It's awfully fun. So something I want to do before I take this tape off is actually I want to do a little bit in the kind of trees in the background. So I got my Cerulean, my Ultramarine, same colors we've been using the whole time, guys. I'm not sneaking anything in on you, okay? And I want to give a little bit more detail to some of that, and I'm going to do a little crimson in there because that will darken it up a little bit. Notice my paint. See that? It's not beating up. It is really quite dry. My brush isn't really wet. This is a nice quality synthetic brush, so the bristles do stay right together. These are the Royal and Langnickel Majestic. I bought this so many years ago. There was a deal in the back of a painting magazine, and I figured, what the heck, I like the other paintbrushes I had tried, the Aqualons I tried for them, so I decided I would give it a try. So what I'm doing is I am just tapping on the chisel edge of my brush here gently, and I am just putting in little branches and just bristles and stuff, just trying to give like the appearance of a bunch of trees that are in the distance, but you can definitely tell that they're trees. I hope that makes sense. Oh, I also want to let you know, I have no idea what my schedule the rest of the week is going to be, so with Christmas so close and so many basketball games that my daughters are playing, there's going to probably be a few days with no videos, but I'll do my best to have videos most days. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here. We're going to tap in some more of those little trees just to give us the, don't, you know, put every detail in it. You're just suggesting, oh, look, there's some trees over there. You can tell because there's some little tree-like marks, but you're not, you know, you're not telling them the whole story. You're letting them do some of the work in their own brain. Now I want a warmer brown, so I added some red to that mix. I'm going to add some yellow and a little more red to make myself kind of like a mushy brown. Look at that, no beading. This paint is pretty dry. And I'm just gonna just tap corner of my brush, putting kind of like a little base area, and then just flick up some shrubs. Go ahead and use a different brush if you want to. If you dry brush, you can get some really nice textures. Just curious about like how far can I go with this one brush? I think we can do the whole painting in this. Okay, and then clean that brush off. Let's take some Ultramarine. Now I do have this watery because I don't want it really strong. A little bit of Cerulean. And now my brush is loaded up with this color of paint, right? But I don't want it this juicy, so what I do is I just blot the belly of my brush with my rag, and it takes off the excess. And that way I can go in there, I can still keep that shade of color, but I don't have like juicy paint going everywhere. So I'm doing shadows with this. Give us a little bit of depth. We can even add some of that in our water here. I'm moving my whole arm. You can't really see it because obviously you're seeing my paper, not my whole arm. I am moving my whole entire arm as I do this. Okay, so it helps me get a nice, flat shape. And I want to tone down those reflections a little bit, so I'm just pulling in some of that paint from the side. On the kind of corners of my, so I'm loading, blotting, and then the corners of my brush, I'm just kind of getting some of those, like, oh, maybe there's some footprints over here, something. The snow is not fully flat. And get that, and then smaller shapes as I get away from the viewer. So things at the bottom of your paper are closer to the viewer, and as it goes up the paper, it's further away. So less, like smaller shapes, a little less texture as you go away. I want to darken it back there under these trees as well. And then this kind of snowbank area where our focal point birch trees are hanging out, I want that to be a little bit warmer in the top. Okay, we've got that shadow there where it's shaded. I want a little bit, maybe a little bit of a pink up there to show that it is, I need to clean up a little area in my palette to show that it is a little bit warmer. The sun's bouncing off, and that is an area that is coming towards us or facing up at the sky. I like this rag. If you guys got this paint set, this is meant to be painting with. This is meant for good lifting. Use it instead of a paper towel. It works great, and then you don't have to use a paper towel. Generally, I find that rags aren't as absorbent as paper towels, and I thought this for sure wouldn't be because it felt very synthetic. But it seems to, I think that's the purpose of it. So I'm just going to brush a little bit of that up here on this snow. If you end up having it too dark, what I do is I dry your brush off and then go in and lift. Okay, and if it's too pink, go in with a little bit of the yellow, and that's going to give it a little bit more of a peachy color. We're using the same. I'm going to clean off the top of my pan there because I was naughty and didn't clean my brush before I stuck it in the pan again. Tisk tisk. Hope Santa wasn't watching. I'll be on the naughty list for not taking care of my paints. Okay. We'll put a little, there we go. Oh, I like that. Just that teeny little bit of yellow was all it needed to warm it up. And we still have some of those purple shadows in there from the trees or from dents or, you know, animals walking in there. We want that. We want those those differences in color. We have used 4 colors and that is it. Isn't that awesome? I love that. I love when we can, I honestly think that our compositions are stronger when we use fewer colors, because then we can't just rely on colors to do the work for us. We have to think about values. We have to think about how creative can we be with this. You know, if we can't just open up a new pan of paint or open up a new tube of paint, we have to work with what we have. And I think that makes us extremely resourceful. Okay, so what I'm going to do, just in case it's still wet around here, is I'm going to, and this does 2 things. I'm going to dry the paper over here, because for one, if you have wet paper and you try to pull off your paper is going to rip. Even good paper could rip. Cheap paper will definitely rip. The other nice thing about using your heat tool is that the heat is actually going to loosen up the adhesive on your masking tape and make it easier to remove. I don't spend top dollar on fancy low tack tapes. I just don't. I'm not going to go, spend $10 a roll on some special painting tape. I'm going to spend $1 a roll on cheap masking tape from the Dollar Tree, and I'll just make sure I use my heat tool when I go to remove it, because chances are I've got to use my heat tool to dry an area anyway, because I want to make sure my paper's dry. Because even if you do have the super duper fancy smancy, $10 roll painter's tape that's just meant for art use only, it can still rip your paper if it's wet. So you know what? This kills 2 birds with 1 stone, and it saves me some money. So now we want to mix up kind of a gray color. We're also going to use some of our sunset colors too. And in fact, what we can do first is we can make kind of like a peachy color. Again, we'll take our crimson and our yellow. That looks pretty darn good just the way it is right there. And I am going to see the sun's here. So the highlight is going to be facing the sun on these branches. So I'm just going to go and give myself a little bit of a highlight of this peachy color down each side of those branches that are facing the sun. It's subtle, but it will do a lot for giving you a warmth and a roundness that will just kind of takes it up to the next level, is what it does. It shows that you're really paying attention and that you are aware of your surroundings, and it just, it just shows you know what you're doing. You know what you're talking about. Heck, you know how to paint. And you can probably barely even see that. You can even probably even go a little bit bolder with it to account for shifting, but to tell you the truth, I didn't see a heck of a lot of shifting from our wet to dry. Maybe you did more because you could see me, when I restarted the camera and the paper was dry, maybe you saw a little bit more of a shift, but I certainly didn't notice much. And then, while you have that on your brush, if there's anything else that you want to touch with that golden light. So pretty. Oh, because you gotta, winters are so long and cold, you gotta just grab any bit of that special golden light that you can grab, it's winter's so long and it's just barely begun. Okay, so now we're going to mix up a nice dark gray. So we know how to do that, right? We're going to take our primaries. We're going to take our blue and red and yellow. Mostly blue and red because the yellow will brown it. I'm going to clean my brush and I'm just going to grab a bunch of yellow right now so I don't contaminate it too badly. Are pretty lovely. So this is the one I reviewed. I reviewed this a couple weeks ago. This is the Paul Rubens set of 24. It's their artist version, their artist quality version. I would say not as nice as Daniel Smith or M. Graham, but I would definitely put them in the I would say they're a little nicer than the Lucas paints, and they're certainly a lot cheaper for a 12 half pan set. For a 24 half pan set than the Lucas. Lucas is good too. Just a little bit different. I think because these don't have the ox gall in them, they remind me a lot more like Holbein. Actually, they remind me of Schminke quite a bit, but maybe not quite as vibrant. I only have 12 colors of Schminke, so I can't 100% do a direct comparison. But from what I have from those brands, that does remind me. Now looking at that looks very green, so I want to go to the opposite of green, which is red. Grab a little bit more of that. It's looking a little, it's almost looking a little brownish purpley to me, so I want to have a little bit more of the blue. I'm starting to get a little more gray because I'm cooling it down. If it looks too warm, I'm adding blue. Getting kind of a wine color. So because I have that wine color in there, I think I'm going to need a little bit more of the yellow. And you're probably thinking, oh, you're going to waste all that paint, but, we'll go through it. Don't worry, we're not going to waste that. And just add a little bit of yellow to that to tone it down. Looks a little green to me. So it's, you know, you just keep adding until you balance out the color. And now you've got some orange undertones, and now go back to the blue. Oh, we're almost there. I think this is going to do just fine. I don't know how much of that you can really see on your monitor, but I got a pretty good brownish gray here. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab a piece of cut up credit card. So when you get a gift card for Christmas, if you do, or if you get an old credit card, just chop it up and save the little pieces because they are really good for this technique. And so I know that light is coming from the right side, so my shadow is going to come from the left side. So what I'm going to do is I am going to just kind of dab and speckle on some messy of this color on the edge. I don't care if it's a little warmer because it's actually going to make this come towards us a little bit more, which is opposite from what we have back there. And then what I can do is clean this brush. I'm going to show you another technique too in a second. This is a little bit easier if you're a beginner though. So I'm going to clean my brush, and then what I'm going to do is just kind of go along the edge so I get a kind of a nice soft blend across, and it just gives us a little bit of a kind of like a roundness to the tree. And then I'm going to use my credit card scraper to just kind of scrape and pull some of that paint around. And I'm making sure that I curve it a little bit as I go, so I'm not going straight across. I'm giving it a little bit of curve. Now, if you are using a wood pulp paper, just be careful not to overdo it. I don't want to say be gentle, because you do have to kind of drag it across there and actually even pick up some color with the scraper and drag it across. But with the wood pulp paper, since it isn't quite as strong as cotton paper, it could pill, but that could give you some beautiful texture in your trees. Don't be like, well, I have to go and buy this paper Lindsay uses, because like otherwise I can't do it. No, you totally can. I do all the time. Just be careful, because it is going to pull. It could pull up your paper a little bit and leave little pills. If that happens, it's part of the texture. Don't worry about it, but just kind of that's why it happens. Don't throw your painting away. It probably is going to even look even better because you'll have texture to it, but that's why. Now look at that gorgeous tree. Isn't that fun? Okay, so the other way that if you want to try this, this is great, but if it feels a little too frustrating for you, then don't do it. So you've got a clean brush. You're going to dip it in water and you're going to blot it. So you've got a damp brush. You're going to pick up your color just on like the bristles on the side of your brush, like that. See, that's the ferrule. You're hearing me tap that in because I just want to get those edges. And then what you're going to do is go along the edge of the tree. Well, I have way more paint than I need there, but that's all right. That will just be a little bit more shaded of a tree. And it will give you a natural, it'll give you more of a natural blend. Of course, I had too much paint on there, or my brush was too wet or something. But that's all right, because I can remedy that just by kind of scraping some of that paint around. I can bring some of it over to the other branch. And everyone's going to come out a little bit different. Yeah, let's try that again. That was not, I'm going to blot some of that off actually. I did have quite a bit too much. But it'll give us a good texture. So it's not the end of the world. It's going to be fine. But this technique called side loading, I definitely need less water in my brush. And probably don't stick it in the paint for so long. I think I left it in there too long. So just use the edge of your brush, and so you can get that nice shadow along the edge. Get that other part of the tree trunk there. And also, I think I want to add a little bit of that down, because this one's kind of coming out of the snow on the side. And something I like to do is actually snip my credit card scraper skinnier on one end so that I can get some interesting textures. I'm going to go in with a dry brush, pick up some of that color, just kind of dab it on so we get those specks that birch trees have. And we can scrape some of that around. I just really like the way this looks. I think it'll look really nice when it's done. Make sure to give it a little bit of a curve so that you have that natural look there. Sorry if my hand's in the way, kind of has to be there. And then for other branches, load up your brush with your color, and then because the paper is dry, you can go ahead, or you can switch to a liner if you prefer, and pull out some of those longer branches. And however many you want to put is completely up to you. You don't need to put everything in there because your brain will fill in the rest. You know, if you've seen a birch tree before, your brain's going to know to, you know, add more branches. You don't need to put everything in there. And remember, branches grow from all sides of the tree, so you don't just want them going off one side or the other. They can go off in front of the tree, they can go off in any direction. And I want to put a little bit more dark down here at the base to give it a good anchoring. And I can actually throw in some little, tiny little branches. We could throw in some more shadows to kind of weight these a little bit too while we're at it. But let's let the base of those trees dry first. And just go in and throw any little dabs or anything else that you want. And if you feel like going with another brush, you can obviously do that because it's your painting. So you do whatever's right for you. Oh, I like that. Okay, so now I'm going to look at my reference photo and I'm going to say to myself, okay, where are the values? Do I have any that's really dark right now in those areas? Where else might I want to have some dark values? I'm thinking I want to maybe darken the base of those hills back there. So I'm going to try to go back to that color that I used and just kind of sharpen that. Oops. It's a very, I should have lifted up this painting and moved it so I could have a better angle to get in there with, but that's all right. And since I want this to blend in, what I'm going to do is just add my color. That line as straight as I can. Clean off my brush and just soften the top edge of that. And then I can grab some of this color. I can add a little bit into some of these, the bases of some of these little shrubs here. And I'm going to add a little bit of blue to that. I'll add both blues. Add some water. Because I want some shadow color, but I don't want it quite as dark as I had it. Not as muddy. And I'm going to add some of this color kind of on that slushy, icy area that we did before. And a little more blue in there, a little bit more, well, both blues. And then I'm going to add just some shadows kind of around these trees just to soften it a little bit, give them a little more weight. Okay, now I think this is pretty well done. I'm looking at the reference photo, seeing if there's anything else that I want to add. The only thing I can kind of see is that in the water in this area, I do see a little bit of a green. So I'm going to grab some yellow, mix it into this. Get that kind of bluish green, kind of desaturated bluish green color. Add a little water to it because that's a little strong. I'm going to blot my brush to get off the excess moisture so that I can go in here, but it's not going to be completely too wet. And I'm just going to drag some of that in from the corner. And that will help us give us kind of like a visual triangle with those other kind of green colors that we have as well. There, and I think that will do it. So what I'm going to do now, dry this real quick. And this will just take a second because I just want to make sure that it's going to do any shifting that it's going to do, so you'll see the actual finished product. And then we'll just take our tape off and marvel at our results. And hopefully you're doing this, you're painting this along with me at home, so you can marvel right along with me at your results. Just know I am marveling at your results too. And then we will gently remove our tape. Ooh, there we go. Ooh, I got that drip of water. I do not want that getting on my painting. And also pull your tape away from you like that. Try to pull it off on itself like that, and that usually will help you prevent rips as well. And there we have it. Move that right in there so you can see it. I think that turned out pretty well. If I had to critique myself, the only thing that I think I would change would be I would try to mix up a darker color if possible with these colors that I used, and it might not be possible with the colors that I used, but I think want a little bit more darker value there. In fact, why don't I do that? And in fact, I think I would do that. Let's do that with a smaller brush. Even though I was going to keep this to just one brush, I think that in this case it would be really beneficial to have a smaller brush. And let's see, I just want a little liner. This one will work just fine and dandy. So that way we can mix colors without so much water in it. So we'll do ultramarine, we'll do both blues, and then we'll do our red, and we'll see what we get there. We might just have to go with the purple. That might be the darkest value we can get, because when you add like a cadmium yellow, it's going to, it's just going to give you kind of mucky brown. So this way you can kind of go in with this. The value is so dark that you can perceive it kind of as black. Okay, so we almost did it all with one brush. You could have stopped there though. You could have said, okay, that's all I'm going to do. But I like how we can get those kind of extra values in here. I think it's worth it. Oh, I like what the palette's doing there. It's kind of cute. Sometimes the best thing is our palettes, you know? I'm going to try not to paint into the border because I really like a nice fresh clean border like that. Work on the tip of your brush when you want to have a nice fine line. Let your lines be lost and found, which means you don't need solid lines from all these branches. You can just have little kind of floating in the air lines, because the brain is going to know that there are branches there. You don't need to paint it all connecting. You just need to give it that that illusion of everything being connected. The brain will do all that. So I like getting some of that contrast, getting some of those dark colors right in front of that beautiful orange and yellow, because then you have that really nice strong high key contrast, and it just gives you that, you know, that nice punch, that nice contrast punch. Because you've got to have those values. If your values aren't there, your painting can be quite weak. So I'm glad I'm adding this. And also anchoring, when you have like the base of something big like this, if you can get some darker colors at the bottom so it can anchor it, that will really help make the painting feel finished and complete and, you know, and attractive. Because sometimes you'll be a little uneasy. Something will feel a little uneasy about the painting, and not uneasy in a good way like you're trying to make a point. Uneasy like something is just not right with this painting. What is it? And it's oftentimes you don't have enough visual weight at the bottom. Add any little details, textures that you want. It's often little like hairy branches growing out of the bottom of these trees. They're fighting for a spot in the sun. And if you see any spots that you want to define, you feel like you just need like a little sliver of definition, this would be the time to do it. So it's not that we really need the small brush for the detail. It's more that we need the small brush to be able to mix the color without so much darn water in it. And you could throw some birds in there if you wanted to. It's your painting. You do whatever you like. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. It's longer than I intended, but hopefully it was worthwhile for you. Please give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'll link the products I used down below, but be Just be sure to use whatever you have on hand. You don't need to go buy special supplies for this, but if you want what I have, I will link that up for you. Thanks so much for watching. I'm sure I'll see you before Christmas, but if not, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year, and be safe, guys. Happy crafting!